Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue our Internet Forum public lecture series here in Aalto University, and warm welcome you all who are here physically in the lecture hall and also following this evening's lectures via internet. And as you know, all our lectures in this public lecture series will appear also in the YouTube a little bit later on, so can be watched afterwards. Just one notification in the beginning for the students who are planning to attend the exam of this lecture series. The exam material is now published in the web courses, and you can find it on the front page. But anyway, we are going forward. We have two excellent lectures this evening here in Aalto University. We are going to talk more and more about the digitalization, about the threats and opportunities, and also the most crucial value or the asset of the digitalization, about the data and the data economy. We will start with Mikko Vastela, who is CIO in Lähitapiola, and he will talk about the digitalization from both threats and opportunities point of view, and he has very long experience in working with these issues, so I am sure that we will get practical ideas as well in this lecture. So Mikko, warm welcome to Aalto University, and I have to ask you first that when was the last time that you were in Aalto University?
Well, this might be the first time in Aalto University. I've attended some executive education courses, but I'm from Turku University, and I'm an economist for training. So being here at the Center of Technology is exciting.
And this is your second speech for today, right?
Yes, I was speaking about digitalization and threats and opportunities at Telia One seminar this morning. So this is not a repetition. That was a warm-up for this one.
Excellent. So you are warm now. So warm welcome to Aalto University, and please, floor is yours.
Thank you. Really nice to be here, and it's always almost exciting to get this kind of question to talk about digitalization, opportunities and threats, because it elevates you from your daily details and those nitty-gritty problems and questions you have. You need to think a little bit larger in order to make some kind of point to make to you students and the viewers online. I have here six bullet points, and I try to create a narrative that binds those together. And first of all, I must say that I can't see many threats in digitalization. It's a change, surely, but it's not more threat than electricity was when that was introduced 19th century, or spinning jenny was introduced in 17th century. So it is a change driver, and I'll touch those issues in this lecture. So a little bit about strategy, because the strategy is the driving force in every business, and it kind of gives you the overall picture where you are heading, and under that strategy you have different kind of sub-strategies or tactics or that kind of. But then about digitalization in my field, in insurance and financial technology in general, then a few points how local Tapiola has approached this issue, and then about risks and threats, and how it will change our employee needs and tasks for our employees. So first about strategy and digitalization strategy. And first of all, I want to emphasize one very important thing, that from the classical strategy point of view, from Clausewitz, from 1880 something, strategy is the art of winning war. Tactics is the art of winning a fight, and then operation is how your soldiers, your army operates. So we need to understand that strategy really is aiming to win a war. Of course, insurance business especially is not a war, but we need to understand that we have a greater goal, what we are trying to achieve, and that is very, very important, because you quite often hear, I hear the question, what is your digital strategy? And I must answer, we don't have one. We have our business strategy, and from that we have derived different tasks and tactical issues, and that's very important. The other important issue is if we go back to the war reference, that it's fluid, it changes, it needs to be agile, and you can't have constantly same strategy or kind of rigid setup that this is how we fight this. The business environment is very fluid, it changes all the time, and you need to adapt to that one, and thus we need an agile strategy, and we need to operate our strategy. Quite often in business literature they talk about executing your strategy or deploying your strategy, and I feel that's fundamentally wrong, especially nowadays when the business is very volatile. You need to be able to change that, and you need to discuss that in your top management, that what is our strategy, what is our environment where we are operating that strategy. So that is like the background for local Tapiola's way of digitizing things. We have our business strategy, and then we are operating it towards our goal. So digitalization is not a strategic theme, it's a tool. It's something we do in order to achieve our business goals. For example, we have created a leakage monitor with one valve manufacturer. So our goal is to make people live better, not only to pay back the claims they have made when they have had accidents. We want to avoid accidents, and thus we are very much steering them to in a safer world, safer life. So we have different kind of tools to do that, digital tools. We have, for example, next best actions for our salespeople, that when customer is discussing with us, we can digitally tell them that what would be not only the solution for the question they have posed to us, but also what is the next best actions for the totality, so that the customer total satisfaction increases. And usually these tools, like the leakage monitor or the next best action or robotic process automation, they are the easiest way to operate our strategy. So it's not something that we strategically think that we need to invest to this in order to win our competition, but vice versa. It's something that we have a problem at our hands, and this digital solution is the fastest and cheapest way to achieve the strategic goal or go towards that strategic goal. So the digital opportunities are everywhere, and that's one opportunity here. So the threats, I said, I can't see many threats in digitalization, but opportunities are plenty. And here are a few, and I thought of a little bit explaining what Lähitapiola is doing with this, just to give you the narrative around my little bit more strategic discussion. So first of all, customer experience and engagement. With digital tools, we can give our personnel, call center, but also the branch office personnel, a 360 view of the customers, what the customer have and what they don't have, and also from the analytics we can analyze that what kind of services would be beneficial for the customer. Not only that we would like cross-sell the customer full, that they have all our products, that is not the goal, but find the optimal solution for that specific customer. Then ecosystems and combined offers with our partners. The leakage monitor is very good, which I just mentioned. We have a valve manufacturer, Grohe, from Germany, who builds those devices that we then give to our customer. And the point there is in our business strategy. First of all, customer avoids accidents, so no leakage in that customer. But our business case is that we avoid paying for that leakage. So it is win-win situation for both of us. Then even individualized offering with the data analytics, we can better understand customers' needs, but also the customers' risks that what they are confronting, and then help them avoid that kind of. We can say that for example, we know that easy example that refrigerators, their lifespan is about 10 years. And when we know that customer has a refrigerator about that age, we can then suggest that perhaps you need to do something that before that breaks down. Breaking down is much more expensive for them and for us than replacing it while it's working. Augmented intelligence, that's very important. In Lähitapiola, we are not talking artificial intelligence, because we are not trying to replace humans. We are trying to augment their ability to make good decisions and give good advice to our customers. So augmented intelligence is something that is like in the toolbox of our customer service personnel. They can check the data and then suggest better solutions for our customer. Advanced analytics I already mentioned. Also machine learning. We get enormous amounts of data from our customers, and we try to utilize that in full. Then process simplification, that is important too. We try to lean our processes in order to help our customers. The processes we are currently having, they are pretty arcane. In fact, they are very old, stemming from the legislation we have had tens of years ago. So with digital tools, we can rethink these processes, that how we can do it in current day situation more efficiently. Compliance, governance, they are very important because insurance business is one of the most regulated businesses. Perhaps the healthcare business is even more regulated, but ours is very, very heavily regulated, and we need to stay inside the compliance sandbox, if you like, and be able to serve our customers, but to comply with the law and regulations at the same time. There, these analytical tools are really handy. Fraud detection. Wherever there is money, there are fraudulent people. Unfortunately, there are different kind of criminals who try to exploit the system, and now with our machine learning and analytical tools, we can easier find the pattern that the fraudsters are doing, and be able to pinpoint those and take the adequate actions. One example from Denmark, it was from colleague of mine told that they had automated claims handling, which means that when customer faces some kind of problems that insurance should replace, for example, the bike is stolen, they could feed that into the system, and the system automatically checks whether there is a policy, and then they pay it back. So some people noticed that that's automated, and they started to put their claims that were just under the threshold, so that they get like free money. They claimed that their bike was stolen, and then they got like 3,000 Danish kroners or whatever, even though the bike wasn't stolen. And now the fraud analytics was very handy there, but also the human mind or the criminal mind is quite funny in that sense that they made 10 minutes waiting period. They didn't pay out it directly, but they made the customer wait for 10 minutes or arbitrary number of minutes for the payout. So those fraudsters, they started to thinking that somebody is reading my claim, and that alone tipped the fraud numbers, and then the fraud analytics in addition to that, they got much better situation. So we need to have all kind of analytical tools and really analyze in statistical sense how our customers are acting and what there is. Sourcing and procurement is also important, because as I said that we are paying a lot of claims, and there are procurement, for example, from car repair shops. So we need to know what kind of prices we have for different crashes and replacements of parts and paintings and so digital tools help us. We have a tool where we have all the car models taken apart and back together, and we have price for each and every part that might go might need to be changed. And innovation and development, there of course digital tools, different kind of mock-ups and wireframes are very handy. We can do the service design early on in the process, and thus help a lot of time. Okay, 50 years of digitalization. Digitalization has been kind of like hype for, what was it, 20 years or something, but in fact it started very early on. In our business it started 1960s, and I have here just to give you idea that how this has changed. What did we do then when the digital computers came in the picture, and what we are doing now? Because this is very important point in understanding the opportunities and the threats of digitalization. So when we started installing computers, it was a registry, and it was policy registers and bookkeeping, calculating our balances and results, and that kind of very elementary issues. Then 1980s we went to stepwise process automation. We started to automate certain slots of our process that were very, very repetitive and easy to automate. Then 1990s, there were claims handling. We started to get claims directly to the computers from our customers. Internet was invented 1990s, and that was of great help for insurance business as well. Then pricing, the statistical modeling of risk was in that kind of stage that we could start to use computers, model the risk, and then give a price that represents the risk that the customer has. And then compliance and governance, different kind of reporting, authorities reporting, but also internal reporting was very, very common that days. And then first parts of end-to-end process automation. Whereas 1980s we had stepwise automation, 1990s we started to have much longer chains automated. And 2000 we have self-service, bundled service, and fully automated processes. And then during this decennium, we have this decade, we have started much more customer-centric data warehouse, customer relationship management, marketing automation, and this brings us to how we have worked with our processes. Until now, we have more or less worked with the internal process. We have been digitizing the then current processes from 1960s. So those processes we have then, which then really were with pen and paper and typewriter for more advanced ones. So now we have digitized. We have exhausted that part. There is nothing more to be automated anymore. So until now we have had, as economists say, we have Taylorism. So people or humans are part of the process, part of the chain. They are taking it from one inbox and doing something and putting it to outbox. And that chain is now fully automated. There's nothing more to be gained there. So now what we have done, we have gone to customer centricity and very much focused during last 2 decades the customer centricity. So we have exhausted one path of efficiencies and gains, and now we have jumped into another, and that truly is different ball game, and that's why they say that insurance is facing disruption, and the disruptive forces are the ones that lead us from our internal processes to external processes. And we call it from human to human with help of machines. So the chain can be fully automated, the process can be fully automated, and now we need to add their human element in order to add value. We kind of have expanded value chain. So this is our official translated strategy slide. Lähitapiola's aim is to offer lifelong security, and we have 3 corners there. Security, which is the usual insurance aspect. Then we have finances, your wealth, and investments and that kind of. And then we have health. We help you stay healthy, and the personalized lifelong security is the core of our business strategy, and the digitalization we are doing aims at increasing or operating that strategy. So the strategy is guiding our development work, and the most important issue is here what I just said, that the process can be fully automated. Now is how we can expand the value chain, how we can be earlier in our customer's life and later. So not only when something negative happens, but we want to be early, ensuring that the customers are prosperous and healthy, and then making sure that every mishap then is reimbursed. So that is important, and we are doing that with partners. So we understand that Lähitapiola as an insurance company cannot do everything ourselves. Indeed, the regulatory framework prohibits us to do that. We are an insurance company and we must stay an insurance company, says the regulator. So we have partners and different kind of ecosystems. We work with platform operators that can help us bring added value, expanded value for our customers. And the human part is there very much. We do this very much relying on digital tools and computers, but the finding the solution for our customer is very much human. It's very much people-driven thing, and we want to keep it that way. Most often when we discuss with our sales personnel or claims personnel, for that matter, and ask that what is good customer service made of, and they said that it's this eyeball to eyeball moment when the customer asks, is this the best solution for me? And the salesperson says, yes, it is. That machines cannot achieve. You need to have trust between two humans there. So what is from human to human with health machines? First of all, we have about 260 point of sale, so branches or temporary places where we can give human services all across the Finland, and that's something we aim to keep. Our competition has gone other way, so they have fully automized, fully digitalized their business, or are in the way to do that. So this leaves us like the Blue Sea strategy. We have no competition where there are very good coverage in insurance products, in savings products, and in healthcare products. Plus, there is people serving you. So this is our core of our strategy, but we can't do it the old way. We need machines to do that. And I like to call that humanware. We have hardware, we have software, but then we have the humanware to achieve this kind of approach. So as the slide says, we have a lot of automation, but we have people to operate that. That brings us to true omni-channel approach. So we really get what we are aiming at in our business strategy. So business strategy really is operating in different channels. The operating channel is changing after about 200 years, and that's very, very good. And it's really time that this business is disrupted as well. So we are approaching security as a service type business model. Then our customer proximity model is changing. It's not only the face-to-face that we have had past couple of 100 years. Now it's becoming more and more omnichannel, and we have more and more different means of communicating with our customer. But what I mean with true omnichannel is that there are the automatic self-service alternatives, but there is always also the human-to-human interaction possibility, or then there is human-to-machine alternative like chatbots or that kind of tools we have. So to summarize this part is that we have the traditional value chain model where we had long processes and we started to automate those. Now we have the digital value chain model where we have the long processes, but above that we have digital means of communicating and creating extra value with let's say augmented intelligence and that kind of tools we have. And then where we are moving heavily is the platform economy model, where we have digitally connected different kind of operators, insurance, healthcare. For example, we have cooperation with Mehiläinen healthcare company, and we are two independent companies, but digitally the information is flowing back and forth. Customer doesn't know who is paying the bill and so forth. It's everything is totally seamless, and the seamless is the next possible stage. The distributed ledger, the decentralized model where we have vast difference of different operators. They can have very small niches that they are supporting in that ecosystem, and that's how they find their living. As the word ecosystem says, they are each other. They are dependent of each other, even though they are seemingly independent. So the digitalization leads to channel optimization, and that's something that, again, as I say, I emphasize that we do not have channel strategy. It's the customer who selects the channel, and we need to support that, because that's how it's more optimal. We have this so-called Helppi family, so different apps we have both for Android and iOS, which then you can use for example, if your pet, a dog or cat or horse, have some health problems, you don't need go to the veterinarian. You can take the app and discuss with our experts and take a picture of the paw of your dog or something like that, and get help digitally. Also the healthcare for humans the same. If you have eye inflammation, you can take a selfie and send that to doctor, and doctor gives you the drug prescription that it awaits you at the pharmacy. Okay, then a little bit about the risks. So what we face, the risks of digitalization, it's mostly how we authenticate our customers, because nowadays it's not clear where they are coming and who they are. We need to understand what the customer or the party that is connecting us, what is their task and what they are after, and we need to check different kind of consents in GDPR framework and that kind of stuff. So the old style firewall and intrusion detection is important still, but the relevant part is now able to authenticate and restrict the access to data, and also, as I said, have the consent of different data items very well stored, so you can log things and then show that this was valid, authorized transaction. especially the decentralized model I just represented poses a great task for this kind of security operations. So the complexity of the new operations, and really that it covers so much more than earlier when we have this perimeter defense, has led us to find new ways of ensuring our security. Even though all the apps and software and everything is tested, the whole chain is now much more visible. It might be that it's not that much more vulnerable, but it's so much more visible that we need to find something. And our solution has been a bug bounty program. We have deployed since 4 years back ethical hackers, so hackers that are there for good reason. They are hacking for good, and they are allowed to hack our systems, and then when they report their findings, vulnerabilities and other problems, then we give them a bounty. We pay for that. 5 years back, now we've been doing this 4 years back, but 5 years back, companies usually sued those persons who tried to hack their systems. So there is 180 degrees change there. We have paid out, by to date, we have paid out about 150,000 euros in different kind of bounties. And there is constantly all over the world people are hacking, knocking our door and trying to find vulnerability. In addition to that, we have hack days, where we invite people to our premises to try to hack also those systems that are our internal systems. So the last couple of slides, is it digitalization opportunity or a threat? And I feel that it is an opportunity. There are a lot of things that will become obsolete, but it creates so much more all the time how business is done. People are very flexible. We have endured so much changes and disruptions, and we just come out of that in a very nice way. So the digitalization has a minimal effect in need for workforce is our findings. The business changes, but it has to change because we are striving after our business strategy. So that is important finding. And then the lean and own work enhancement is at the core. People love to develop their own jobs. And how we have done that, we have given the responsibility of enhancing one's business to each and every employee. It's not coming, the robotization and that kind of stuff, it's not coming from above, but it's coming from the bottom, that people are allowed to enhance their business or their work and implement robots to do the work. And that's very positive result. We haven't made many people redundant, even though we have gained huge efficiency gains there. So just to summarize, digitalization is not a goal. It's a tool, and it's nothing new. It's like been 60 years around, and it's not strange. Opportunities and threats are not very different from other business, or from the business itself. And digitalization is not the same as automation. If we think about automation and making people redundant, we have exhausted that part. We need to use digitalization for customer service now. So it is an opportunity to increase agility and pace of change, to really to disrupt our business and give us our strategic goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mikko. And I have to say that when I was listening to you, I was especially I was very happy about it that usually when we talk about the digitalization, we are talking about the technology and how this is like a technology-driven trend, what is more or less all over us. But actually your point was quite different. You were emphasizing in many, many words, in many, many slides, the centrality of the human and the customer.
Yes.
And I think that's a very important point. How is actually business going on in Lähitapiola at the moment?
Very well, thank you. The Q3 numbers are not yet official, but I must say that it's going fine.
Yeah, I have to say that.
Yeah.
Also, listening to you after this presentation, I can imagine that the numbers are doing well.
Yeah.
Also.
But I think that, as I said in the very beginning of my presentation, that it is the same kind of issue that when the electricity came, it changed a lot, and some people became redundant and some practices became obsolete, but it brought so much good for humanity, and I feel digitalization is similar. There are jobs that are going to disappear, but those people they find new ones. I've said that I've been in the business now for 20-something years, and those applications I got 1990, they are not coming in anymore. So where are those people? They have found new jobs. They have re-educated themselves, or somehow they come along.
One question I have to ask you, since you have long experience working with these issues, and we have a lot of students here in lecture hall as well as following this via internet, what would you say in the coming years? What kind of skills are needed, especially to implement all these strategic ideas what you just presented?
First of all, I would emphasize people-to-people skills, because computers are helping us so immensely in many issues, but the human-to-human interaction is something that is not going to be replaced anytime soon. But the real skills you need is curiosity. So world is changing all the time, and you need to keep pace. So for students, what is important in your life is to keep yourself relevant to the job market. It's not your certification and what you the paper you get when you get out of this university. It's more like the stack of skills you have. You can have your academic skills, but you need to have other skills as well. You need to be like internet savvy. You need to be fluent in social media and that kind of stuff, which is not in your curriculum, I think. So I really emphasize more the stack of your skills than the certifications you have. Certificates as such are very good ways of proving your stack, but they are not the essential ones.
Very good. Questions, comments? Now it's time to be curious. Okay, I think you said everything already. So
Good.
Thank you very much, Mikko, for visiting Aalto University and giving this great lecture, human-centric, digitized lecture, I would like to say. So thank you, Mikko, very much.
Thank you.
And we will go straight to our next lecturer, who comes from Sitra, senior lead Jyrki Suokas from Sitra, and his title is Data Economy. Sorry, Jyrki, I have to ask you, I don't know. What is Sitra in English?
Sitra is the Finnish Innovation Fund, or it's Finnish Independence Fund. So what we are doing, we were established 52 years ago. So what we're doing is making Finland a better place for Finns and also Finnish companies. So we're inventing for the futures, creating new concepts, new ways of living, new ways of working, new ways of learning. So that's what we do. So we are in project organization with the sole aim of creating a better place for all of us.
Sorry, I have to ask you, I know that you are going to talk about this as well, but how would you summarize creating Finland to be a more innovative and better place for all of us? What are you emphasizing in Sitra, especially at the moment?
Especially right now, one of the big teams, we were organized in teams. One of the big ones is, of course, circular economy. So how do you create less waste, or actually zero waste? And how do you make the world work in a circular fashion, in that sense that when you create a product, something like this, you already take into account when you create the product in the first plans, the visions for it, you make it recyclable, circular in that sense that it can be reused. Bits and parts of it, preferably all of it.
Yeah.
And data is, of course, in the middle of circular economy. So changing the business models, there will be some sort of discussion about changing the business models also in this presentation. That how do you actually make yourself, as Mikko was saying, make students making themselves relevant? How do the companies make themselves relevant in the global markets? In this world of globalization, where everything is sort of instantly global, and everything needs to sort of work in a world where your competition can be on the other side of the globe. So how do you make yourself relevant? How do you make yourself sort of integral part, the ecosystem thinking also in Mikko's presentation and my presentations also? How do you create yourself as a key player in those ecosystems where you want to play?
So you agree with Mikko that the curiosity is an essential feature for you as well?
Absolutely. If you stop being curious, then you should die.
Okay, don't die. Please give your lecture first.
Okay,
At least.
let's go. Good. Okay, so let's start this presentation. I'll wake you up and get you off from your computer screens. Show of hands. How many of you are on Facebook? Just raise your hand. Okay? Half of the people. Okay. If I would have asked how many of you are on a platform among 2.41 billion other people, where you actually are raw material, working in slave labor, creating content, pictures, videos, text for free, gaining nothing, and at the same time you among all the other 2.41 billion people on Facebook are being packaged in a really nice sort of profiles, then sold off to companies who then market you whatever is actually not needed by you. How many of you would have then raised your hand? Just a couple. So I started with a reverse definition. So this is what we call unfair data economy. So we are being used, and we are being used big time, and these sort of practices run by these companies. And now I'm picking on Facebook. There are others, but they are so easy to be picked on. So in that sense, I'm going to use them a couple of times. I have actually personally nothing against Facebook. I think I'm still on it. I got this sort of birthday wishes over the weekend through Facebook from friends I haven't seen in 40 years. So in that sense, it's an excellent way to connect, but I sort of don't like so much the commercial parts of it, or even the political parts of it. We have a couple of examples here in the Western world where Facebook has been a tool for the sort of unfriendly forces, not naming anybody, who have affected a outcome in a couple of Western democracies in UK and in US. So I'm not going to talk about technology. What I'm going to talk about actually is about religion. So the title for the presentation is Thesis for Fair Data Economy. And this guy is a quite important person in the world of actually in the world of Christian religion. So this fellow is a German monk, a Catholic monk by the name of Martin Luther, who in 31st of October, almost 502 years ago, what he did, he nailed a quite large number, 95 theses on the wall of a church in Germany. And what he did, he actually revolted against the Catholic Church, and he created a new religion. So our intention in the project that we are doing, we don't actually have 95 of these theses. We only have a handful of these theses, and they're hopefully easy to remember, hopefully capturing the essence of what data economy is, what it does, and then how it affects your life and everybody else's life, the business, and everything more or less on this earth. So let's go through these one by one, and in the sort of after I show the sort of the thesis, the short sentence, there's a yellow slide, and that yellow slide is a concept that I hope you remember after this. Something which you most likely here as a student have learned, but if you look at this sort of older generation like me, we're still constantly learning and still trying to be constantly curious about what is going around us, so we know what the heck is actually affecting our lives. So let's start with the first one. So if the service is free, then you are the product. So the Facebook example. And the important concept on the yellow slide, multi-sided platforms. Multi-sided platforms is a key concept developed, and this is not something that is the Googles and the Facebooks. This is not something which is brand new. So if we look at Microsoft, MS-DOS, we have some people here who remember floppy disks and wonderful sort of command line combinations of funny words that we had to write to make computers do stuff that we wanted. But actually MS-DOS is one of the very first digital multi-sided platforms. So Microsoft creating an operating system for IBM, but actually making sure that there are other players who can also create computers on the specs that actually IBM then created, but then Microsoft benefiting from all of the players and not just IBM. So what they ensured through agreements, legal documentation, that they were actually the biggest beneficiaries in this whole concept of operating systems and so on. So we've seen closed operating systems like Macintosh or iOS, macOS and so on, and those have not been so wildly popular as Windows in its heyday, and then of course then we have free alternatives like Linux, which is a, let's say, unbeatable customer value proposition, getting something working brilliantly and not paying too much for it. If we then look at Facebook, it actually started with not a multi-sided platform. I think the idea that Mark Zuckerberg and the guys in the very early phases in Harvard they already had this sort of bigger picture in mind, but this is how innocently it started. This is really one-sided platform, sort of. That's not me, that's a friend of mine, a picture from almost 40 years ago, and sort of getting to know your friends and connecting with your friends. But this actually, when this is a one-sided platform, how do you actually earn money from this? Facebook revenue, sort of yearly revenue at the end of Q2, 62 billion US. So how do they make money by connecting people? They don't make the money by connecting the people, and that's why I asked the question in the beginning. They make the money from advertising revenues, from licensing fees, from developers on the bottom left, and us, we are not the revenue sort of generating. Nobody hopefully pays for Facebook, so we're not the ones providing the revenue. As said, we are the raw material provided for the advertisers, for them to make money by offering products that we actually don't need. So the multi-sided platform is really the key, that whenever these sort of platforms are created, you need to understand the business model, you need to understand who is who and what is what. Again, if the service is free, then you are the product. So this is an easy tell when you sort of start looking for how actually these kind of money-making machines are created and how they operate. There are excellent sort of analyst articles out there. For example, just Googling how Uber makes its money. So there's an excellent model there that shows that how he actually sort of creates a model from the drivers, from us needing rides, and making money now even more when delivering food and this kind of things. So constantly adding new signs to the platform and constantly creating better ways of making money for themselves, of course. Okay, so that was the first one. And the next one is size also does matter. I think that's the biggest dog in the world, or somebody really handy with Photoshop on the picture. But anyway, the key here is something called non-linear business models. The non-linear business models, or network effect, that is what is behind the success of all of these giants like Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, these guys. And where is really the essence or the heart of the non-linear business model? It's in the value of, or where does the value come from? And in these sort of networks, the value comes from, or the potential value comes from the connections, of the parties within the network. So there is a nice formula. Even I can still understand these kind of simple formulas. So the value comes from the connections. How many connections there are when you have two parties? Of course, there is only one. If you have 10, okay, there's 45. And when there's 100, it's 4,950. So the value of the connections, again, as you can see, it grows non-linearly. And in the case of Facebook, I don't even know what that number is. It's quite big, many zeros in it. So, okay, that doesn't really, well, but anyway, you get the picture. So the value comes from the connections of the network members. How many members you are, that's why the size really does matter. And that's why all of these networks, the first aim is get as many sort of players, get as many parties, get as many customers, get as many users as possible, and then start monetizing it, monetizing the connections. And again, comparing linear growth, so that's not that's the blue line, which you can barely see, from 1 to 100, and the non-linear one growing to 1 from 4,950. So the shape of the curve is quite important, because this curve here shows positive linear growth. And this is a chart from Facebook's quarterly advertisement revenue from 2010 to end of, 2019, Q2 2019. And it's very non-linear in that fashion. It's positively non-linear. But in the world of platforms and ecosystems, because most of these platforms are really ecosystems, as was described by Mikko, you can also experience negative linear growth. Okay, the word is a bit oxymoron in that sense, but this is an example of negative linear growth, and this is an example quite close by from Keilaranta. This is the market share of Nokia's smartphones, and the growth, or the actual negative growth, is it declined then from 07 to 013 even faster than the picture from Facebook, from almost 50% to non-existent, was really, really fast. And the reason? They failed with the ecosystem. They failed with the developer ecosystem, the app ecosystem. They failed to become a real platform. And at the same time, I guess we could find an exactly the same kind of chart from Android or Apple iOS revenues going the opposite direction. So what really killed Nokia is, or the Nokia mobile phones is the failure to create a viable platform, viable ecosystem. And that's why the ecosystem business models are so crucial and important. Okay, good. Then the fourth one. So instead of being the early bird catching the worm, it's better to be the cat than the early bird. Meaning that it's not always good to be the first, because there can be first mover disadvantages. And then also the other concept of market tipping. Let's get into that in a moment. Trying to gauge the sort of the median age of people in this room, but this is how we used to do Googling back 20 years ago. Alta Vista. And if you look at the keywords on this slide, it has finance, it has food, it has travel, shopping. It has everything that actually you can find on Google by Googling today. I don't think there's a verb in any language called altavisting, but there is actually Googling. So in that sense, these guys were the first, or they were really, not even the first, but they were really good. But then learning from their mistakes, building it better, building on top of something that was there before, the second movers or whatever they actually were, they were able to conquer the market and actually change the way we talk and change the way we research and change the way we even sort of discuss within the family about things. I'm being known to grab my phone whenever a question is being asked, and it's always my wife trying to make conversation. I'm trying to find answers, but that's apparently not a good thing to do. Social media, Friendster, says there somewhere, find out more than 13 million people like you are already on this network. 13 million compared to 2.41 billion. Again, I guess it's a quite small number. But 13 million in those days when this slide was taken was a massive number. So in that sense, learning, doing better, creating something which actually sort of solved somebody's problem, not the user's problem, not the raw materials problem, in a better way than Friendster did, actually gave a boost to what now we know as Facebook. And there are countless other examples. Some people in long time ago used this sort of funny little microblog. I have no clue what this is, but some people still, I guess, are using this kind of services. But if you don't conquer the market, if you don't become the giant, the gorilla, if you don't tip the market, then there is always somebody who will come and be the next Friendster, be the next Alta Vista, or even maybe the next Twitter. We'll see. So market tipping is that if you become big enough, actually your network becomes big enough, and you retain the parties in the network, then it's very difficult to push you or become the new player in whatever niche this is all about. And then this is what is quite controversial. I've been working with data for the past almost 30 years, even building databases, and in those old days we didn't have, which today could be called multidimensional in-memory analysis tools, building something like this on your own. Working with data, I would have said that data is that is really valuable. Data is the new oil or the new gold or whatever. But then researching and discussing this with much more intelligent people than myself is that this saying that data is the new oil actually is not true. It is true to a point that oil, crude oil, needs to be refined for it to sort of achieve some value. The same way data needs to be refined, meaning analyzed, to create value out of this. And to prove the point that why data is not the new oil or gold or whatever, these sort of 6 points. The first one, these are really difficult to pronounce for a Finn, but rivalros. So if I have the data, if I have the oil, you cannot have the same barrel of oil, but we can share the same data. The excludable also, if I use the oil, you cannot use the same oil anymore. So in that sense, data can be reused many times. Fungible, again, a really fancy word, but what this actually just means is that if I say that this barrel or this bottle of oil is of certain value, then you know that this barrel or bottle of oil is of the same quality, is of the same value. But of data, we have actually no clue what the value of the data set of me or then of Mikko. Mikko is much more valuable than I am, by the way, but still, you don't know it beforehand. And creating new oil or refining new, sort of finding new oil, it always has a positive marginal cost. We know sort of roughly that how much it costs to produce a new barrel or bottle or so on, but data actually more or less creates itself. In your, is it now in cloud today in local Tapiola or yeah, you're starting to maybe moving towards cloud. Do you actually sort of accumulate more and more data all along, and wherever you store it, it is there for you, but creating the data by following the actions of the customers or IoT sensors or this kind of things, it actually sort of creates itself there. So there is zero marginal cost in sort of having or creating new. And this search good and experience good again comes to the value or the price. So I know what the value of the oil is, but again I cannot know the value of the data before I have experienced it. I have actually used it or refined it. And then the sort of the constant returns to scale, again the linear versus the non-linear model of usage. And what this just proves is that oil is valuable even in its sort of non-refined form, but data is worthless. So you can use these fancy 6 points, 7 points whenever somebody says that data is the new oil. You can be much smarter than them and say actually it is not. It is to a certain point, but after certain sort of really important attributes of elements, looking at those, you actually can say that data is something which we actually don't even understand too well what it actually is. In this building we have a couple of really bright, maybe one could say even radical professors, Pekka Nikander. And we just discussed with him a couple of days ago that we actually, the economists that work in banks or in government agencies and so on, they actually don't understand how data economics actually work, how the raw material data, how it actually is used, refined, transferred, where does the value come from? But I can bet that the economists working for Facebook and Google and those guys, they know how the value from data is extracted, or created and extracted. So in that sense, understanding the economics of the economy is really the key. So this was a sort of like a intermission, but the real concept is really what is the way to refine the data, and it's analytics. So it's nothing really new. Artificial intelligence. When I started studying computer science here back in 1988, we were taught a variant of artificial intelligence language Lisp called Scheme. Well, we couldn't understand what the heck it is. I still can't, but it actually was artificial intelligence, one of the sort of basic building blocks. So it's nothing new. Me as an old guy 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, even in those days, sort of artificial intelligence was research and it was somewhat known. But now with the power of infinite storage, infinite computing power, and again infinite data, this sort of the promise of the artificial intelligence and this sort of advanced analytics methods becomes reality. So coming back to the raw material analogy, so here is a set of raw materials for something. Okay, we don't really know what the heck that will be, but this picture still shows raw materials for something. Okay, now you can start to see, okay, this vaguely looks like, but does this really have value? Can you use this, go from place A to B, or have fun on the freeway and whatever you want to do, or drive a rally? No, you actually need to refine it, you need to put it together exactly the same way you actually need to take the raw material data, refine it, analyze it, and then you have the end product, then you have the value, and then you can do something with it. Okay, so those were the four theses for fair data economy. And the fifth of the four is world is full of surprises. And what this surprise is market value. If we look at the 10 largest companies in the world, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and almost now, we can see that the world has changed quite a lot. 20 years ago, well, 21 years ago, the largest company in the world was Microsoft. And now my chart is old, I know, because Microsoft is again the largest company in the world by market value. And again, Microsoft, one of the very first examples of non-linear business models. But as you can see from the color change, I hope this color combination is not sort of, it's colorblind friendly. So you can see the red creeping in. 7 out of 10 largest companies in the world now operate on non-linear business models. You can see really familiar names among the red ones, some oddly sort of stranger ones. There's even one honest bank in number 10, JP Morgan. I think they have now fallen off the list. But all of the other companies are these sort of examples of non-linear business model. And if we take the 60 largest platforms, the model example of non-linear business model today, or some couple of months ago, we can see that us here in Europe, okay, I like to think that I'm still somewhere in Europe, sort of geographically located, the market value of the European platform companies compared to the US, the guys from the Wild West, and then the mostly on the yellow one, the controlled China one. So we are sort of being pressed quite hard by these large companies. So there is not a single good example of a real platform company here in Europe. Okay, they have included SAP because the guys were German who did this, but is SAP really yeah, I'm shaking my head also. Yeah, is it really a platform company? If you really stretch the definition, they might be, but in the end, in Europe, we don't have any good examples of real, meaningful platform companies. Okay, my 19-year-old daughter might say that, hey, Spotify is the most important service in the world for her, but in the end, if you look at from the big picture, not a single one. So that was the number 5, world is full of surprises. And then, number 6, this is the last one, no more surprises. It's okay to make money out of data, but if you do it the fair way. And this is a bit of a advertisement also for the work that we do in our fair data economy project at Sitra. But in the end, these are our views and being shared also by, let's say, quite many people out there. And this world is really about business models. So what is the business model that actually was, is, and will be the relevant model in the world today? Mikko showed a slide also from Gartner. I guess we're also going, both of us, to Barcelona to listen. No, you're not this year. So listen to the sermons by Gartner, and there will be a gathering of 4,000 or 5,000 CIOs around Europe, listening to what Gartner has to say and predicting things. And funnily enough, their predictions come to truth quite often. Of course, because they are also teaching people what is the best way to do things. But they are quite funny. They are quite funny in that sense that they say that they used to do so that a 0.9 sort of 90% chance that this will come to become a leading business model in the next 5 years. Of course it will, because they are saying to those decision makers who understand that how things really work, that they actually know their stuff. So Gartner, we are also working quite closely with them. They are doing a lot of research into ecosystems, and what they are saying is that the current platform model, this sort of one single platform, the biggest conquers all the markets, the biggest is the most beautiful one, winner takes all mentality. That is fortunately just a phase that we are going through, and the world will be actually about ecosystems, and ecosystems of distributed and open nature. So the idea is that by creating a world which actually has rules and guidelines set by somebody, will actually make the world a better place for all of us. And by rules and regulations, I mean things like GDPR. My favorite regulation, GDPR. I'm not sure if Mikko or anybody else shares that or feels so strongly about GDPR. But GDPR, PSD2, the Payment Services Directive, second version, they are the building blocks of a fairer and better world where data can be used and will be used in a much better way. So, data economy. Now coming back to sort of stopping the religious talk for a bit, and what it actually is. So data has been there for many, many years. Computers we've had for 60, 70 years. I used to work for Danske Bank, which was Postbank, and before that Leonia Bank, and then Postbank. We had the very first computers in Finland many years ago, even before I was born. So in that sense, creating data, working with data, analyzing it, refining it, using it, that's nothing new. But this sort of sharing data and then using data from not just your own data vaults or your data sort of sets, but also combining information from outside using APIs or any other method to transmit, share data, and then utilize that data to create new kinds of new services this sort of what we call the fourth phase of the data economy, creating new digital database services by not just having the data that you have, but what you can also get from the outside. And what makes data economy fair from our point of view, of course, it's about the services, the better insurance services or services that we get from service providers that use data coming from multiple different sources. And then what is with this sort of the feedback loop that makes this the fair data economy is that it's value, it's a what I pay for the service, or if I stay with Lähitapiola as a customer, that's value for Lähitapiola because I'm generating revenue for them. So that's the value, sort of bit hazy definition of what actually value is. Not just pure monetary value, it's improved customer experience, improved customer satisfaction, but it also can be money. So the value is provided not just to service providers, but it's also provided to the providers of the raw material, the data sources. So if I build a car, of course I pay for the rubber manufacturer and the guys who make the chassis and the engine and so on. In the same way, the sort of having a model where you actually then provide value back, the value you capture, but you also provide value back to the data sources that provide you with the raw material. I'll give you an example in a couple of slides, actually on the next slide, of a model which actually doesn't fulfill the example of fair data economy. So when we talk about business to consumer world, I know this is a busy slide and you cannot read it, it's not intended to be read. So GDPR, wonderful piece of legalese, the language that the lawyers talk. It has given us European citizens superpowers that we actually don't realize that we have. One of the key superpowers, it's hidden, I think on page 74. It took me 5 days to get there because I always fell asleep in the evening reading this. But Article 20 is about right for data portability. And this is a not so well known part of the GDPR legislation, but it's not a request, but it is actually a demand I can make to a company. I can say to Nordea, the Finnish bank, please send my data about me to OP Bank. Nordea needs to do this. But I can also say, Nordea, well, if I'm nice, I can say, please send my data over to Aalto University. And they need to do it. And Aalto University needs to accept it. But the challenge there is that this 20 rows of legislation or regulation text actually doesn't define the format, the method, or actually even the timing of how this wonderful transaction of my data being transferred from one organization to another actually takes place. So there is a bit of work to be done. There is a 120-page document describing these 20 rows of text, but it still doesn't describe the method, the format of the data transfer. PSD2, I mentioned my second favorite regulation text. So what this actually did 6 weeks ago, all European banks had to open APIs so third parties can access the current account information, the transactions, and the balance of the account, and they can also initiate payments if they are these BISPs in addition to BAISPs. Again, fancy new acronyms to be learned. But this world is actually the first sort of, well, it wasn't a cannon sort of roaring, cannons roaring, it was more like hearing a biff from something. Actually, not much has really happened and there is in Finnish there's a good word valuvika. It doesn't really translate almost as well as kalsarikänni, but what it means that there was a fault in the regulation, and the fault was that the banks acting as data sources, they actually won't get rewarded. They get no value back from the third parties creating the services. And what banks do, if they don't see a business case, they actually don't really do a really good job. So there's a really well documented examples of banks creating a compliant API that doesn't work. Okay, how does the third party developer, the fintech company, then access that bank? It actually can't, but the API is there and it's compliant. So in that sense, what could have been the really first excellent example of data economy, well-working data economy, actually was not so great example, again, just by this valuvika, the fault in the regulation itself. On the business-to-business side, the aim to become more and more efficient. The excellent chart, remember the X chart from Mikko. Having better data, the customer centricity is all about data. The 3 bullet points Mikko had in his chart, data warehouses, CRM, it's all about data. It's all about data from the customers. So being more data savvy, being more data literate as a company, in addition being more data savvy and data literate as an employee of any of these companies, is really sort of showing these are the winners, these are the losers. And again, the business models. We hope, and we are doing a lot of work to build a world where the playing field is more even. The rules are applying to all of the players in the same way, and we are all playing the same game. And we truly believe that creating good examples, and that's why it's let's say a pity that the PSD2 open banking has not really sort of worked so well that it should have been, but creating new services for us individuals or for companies actually requires the raw material, and the raw material then creates a innovation platform where innovative companies can start creating new products and services, and then this circle hopefully then feeds itself by creating new and better services for us, so we can enjoy these services, and again, companies providing these services get some value, capture some value, doing whatever is needed in the ecosystem. This ecosystem world, fully agree what Mikko was saying, that there will be small parts of the overall sort of process chain that players can fulfill. But if, for example, you're really good in logging things from multiple sort of sources that this truly took place, you can actually start charging 1 millionth of a euro cent for each of these transactions. You're really good in logging, then you can find your spot in the ecosystem, and 1 millionth of a euro cent, if there are enough transactions, can become sizable sums. A couple of good books. I'm not sure if these are easy to read books, not the books that usually are being used here in this school, but these are easy to read books. The left from a couple of professors from MIT Sloan, again shows or gives the reader an excellent framework to understand the world and understand how companies can actually become players and create their own business model, digital business model. And the other one, the Business of Platforms, quite recent book also, again, the history of the platforms, but it's now sort of updated to this sort of 2010, whatever is the decade now, Again, easy to read, entertaining, good books, showing that teaching people what is the world of platforms and what is the world of the business models, the world we live in. So, 6 theses. Hopefully, you got something out of this. The important concept, multi-sided platforms, the non-linear business models, all of those things. They are affecting your lives every day, so you better understand how and who is actually affecting it, whichever way they are doing it. So, that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Jyrki. Very interesting presentation. I especially liked one of your slides, well, many of your slides, but especially the one what seems to be more and more discussed here in Finland as well as in the whole Europe at the moment. Simple question, where are the European options?
Yes.
What is your answer? Are we going to have, for example, in our smartphones, some European applications in the near future? What is how you see it?
We certainly hope so. We are making big strides to make this a better world, let's call it better world, in that sense that the Wild West, the controlled China, so there is an European way here in the middle. And we've raised the sort of like walls around Europe with GDPR, protecting us European citizens, but also European companies. As a Sitra, we conducted a study, a company study survey. We asked 450 Finnish companies, 450 German, Dutch and French companies about data economy. And one of the questions there was related to GDPR. And the GDPR, those companies, in short, that took GDPR seriously, not some bullshit coming from Brussels, but this actually makes us to look at our data repositories, how we handle, what are the processes. That's the essence why GDPR actually was created, that you actually understand your own stuff. It created a understanding among these companies that actually we can make money, we can create a business around data, but now we can also create a business where we can combine data from others, but we actually don't have the tools yet, but there's an understanding, a sort of lights blinking in the sort of more advanced companies' heads that actually there is a massive opportunity. But okay, will there be a European Google? Will there be European Facebook? Nobody knows. But the idea is that by leveling the playing field, at least there will be better services, more ethically sound services, fairer services, that then I hope people will then vote with their, not with their feet, but with their fingers.
So what would you say, after 3 weeks, you know we are going to have this huge slush event once again in Helsinki, and we have many startups here in Aalto University as well, and some of them are thinking about these issues.
Yes.
So how would these startups differentiate themselves from the Chinese or the US solutions to these investors when they are giving their speeches in slush? What would be your advice?
Well, again, the values, the European values. Again, now, sort of, but the idea is that this service, this is actually transparent. This is fully open. You know what is actually happening to your data, how it's being used, what we are doing with it, and if we are using data from outside, we're actually benefiting those companies also in that process. That we are an ethically sound company and the service is something that actually fulfills these criteria. That, well, the criteria still needs to be made, but the idea is that there is a sort of a value-based way of doing things. 181 US companies signing the declaration last summer that the sole purpose of a company is no longer creating value for the shareholders, but it's also benefiting the society, the suppliers, the customers, the whatever, the whole world. So in that sense, I think there's a lot of movement also among even the largest companies towards this sort of a, let's say, sort of beneficial, more positive way, and not just sort of ripping everybody off in a most capitalistic way possible.
Yeah. One more question I have to ask you. This is a little bit personal, but don't worry, we are in the internet at the moment. What would you say from your point of view? For example, using these different Google services, which are free, and like you said in thesis 1, then we are the product.
Yes.
If you would be able to control all that data,
Yes.
Are you willing to pay for that? Like 20 euros per month if you know where your data is going when using Google services, for example?
Yeah. There is a constant debate in what is called the My Data community. So my data is this sort of, I'm in control of my data, and I grant you, dear company, the access to my data. So that's the essence of my data. There's a constant discussion about this sort of direct monetization, 20 euros, or, and again, this is my more sort of personal view, this sort of indirect monetization of my data in the form of better services.
Yep.
So we have this sort of crazy ideas. Hopefully somebody creates these sort of new services. Let's say in an app or a service that combines my health information, my information from my sports tracker, and then K group and S group, the grocery shopping ID. So it actually nudges me towards more better, sort of healthier life by using my health data, that my cholesterol level is still too high, so I actually cannot put eggs or high cholesterol items on my shopping list. Or if I try to put beer on it, it says, well, you haven't done your 5 hours of exercise this week. You actually didn't earn it. Okay, really stupid example, but this way it actually can provide me with information and insights based on the data that is contained in these 4 organizations. Currently that is not possible because there is no open API at K group or S group.
Yeah.
But something that the work we are doing is we're building these needed building blocks so this kind of world can exist. And it's me who is saying, giving the consent that please use this data and that data for this purpose.
Yeah. Very good. Hey, one more question. The same I asked Mikko earlier. What would you say to our students? What kind of skills are needed in the near future?
In this building, this is great combination. Is it industrial economics, still tuotantotalous, and data science. So I had a third-year student working as a summer intern, and he had this brilliant combination of industrial economics, data science, understanding the money side, but also understanding the technical side, and combining this. So not just being a pure data scientist, okay, nothing against data scientists, but understanding the context, and that comes from the business side. Yeah. This is an unbeatable combination, and we should have more of persons like this.
And no forgetting the importance of the cybersecurity.
Yes, of course not.
Good. Any questions, comments to Jyrki?
It's getting late.
Yeah, it's late and dark, like internet.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Jyrki. Thank you everybody for attending this lecture, and we will continue after 1 week. Thank you.